Ash Ketchum re-challenged Tobias and actually battled Red in the Pokemon anime? How would have Ash encountered both of these trainers, and what would have been the outcomes of these battles? Hey, what's going on guys, my name's Raph, and welcome to Pokemon the Movie Battle Saga vs Tobias and Red. I've recently made 2 Pokemon anime fanfiction episodes focusing on Ash challenging Tobias again in Sinnoh, and with him also finally meeting and battling Red at Mount Silver. Let's watch the full movie together and see how the stories unfold. Be sure to stay to the very end for a surprise and announcement on the next installment of this series. Sit back, grab some popcorn, and most of all, please enjoy. The episode begins with Ash and his friends continuing with their journey. The gang end up arriving at a town in the Sinnoh region, and Misty notices a poster on the wall announcing that a special battle event will be held on the Lily of the Valley island. Ash is instantly amazed by this, and we get to see continuity flashbacks for when he competed back in the Lily of the Valley conference. He explains to Misty that he managed to battle friends, rivals, and he even took on a trainer with a powerful Darkrai Latios. Ash then wonders if he will ever see that mysterious trainer again. As the gang head to board the ship to the island, Ash hears someone screams his name. Brock smiles and notices Dawn has also decided to join the gang as they head to the island. Dawn explains how she was selected to become a judge in the next Sinnoh Grand Festival being held on the island. Ash explains how he's feeling pumped to battle the trainers at the battle event. Dawn says, "That's so like you, Ash," and Misty states that she didn't expect anything different from the new world champion. After arriving on the island and registering for the event, Ash heads to the Pokemon Center and sees a trainer revive his Pokemon after a battle. He overhears how the trainer mentioned to Nurse Joy that his recent battle was against a trainer covered in white, and he used a Pokemon that he has never seen before. Ash is concerned, and before he could ask the trainer more about the mysterious opponent, the TV in the Pokemon Center showcases an important announcement. The commentator states that the winner of the Lily of the Valley conference from 10 years ago will be competing in the special event. Ash is shocked by this. Before he was able to say his name, the commentator states that Tobias will be returning. Misty is puzzled by who Tobias is, and this is where Ash explains that he is the trainer that he lost to in the semi-finals back when he competed in the Lily of the Valley conference. Taking this news into consideration, Ash feels very confident that he may have a chance of beating him, and he remembers from his previous battle how Pikachu and Latios both ended up facing a double knockout. Ash feels very determined and excited to battle Tobias again, and then proceeds to make a call to Professor Oak. He tells Oak how he has registered for the event, and he wishes for him to send over some Pokemon. Oak questions Ash, asking which ones he would like to send over, and Ash simply smiles and says the following words: "Send them over." We then transition to the day of the finals, and Brock, Misty and Dawn are cheering in the crowd. Brock states that the last time he saw the battle between Ash and Tobias, he only got to see 2 of his Pokemon, and he is very keen to see what other Pokemon he has up his sleeve. Misty is smiling, assured that Ash will be able to pull through okay, whilst Dawn and Piplup showcase their iconic cheerleading. The commentator welcomes Ash to the crowd, announcing him as the Alola champion and the new world champion, who recently defeated Leon in the finals of the Pokemon World Championships. During this time, we see Delia, Oak, and Tracy all watch the battle from Pallet Town, and we also see Paul and Reggie watch the battle live from their home. Ash is then shown with his Mega Glove, Z-Power Ring, and Dynamax Bag. The commentator goes on to welcome a trainer who has been classed as an Imperial due to his flawless battling and win record. Tobias then emerges from the dugout. He says to Ash that it's been a long time since they last saw each other, and congratulates him on his latest accomplishments. Ash thanks Tobias and congratulates him for becoming an Imperial trainer. He then also says that this time he will win. The commentator then states that the rules for this battle will be a full 6-on-6, and the battle is over until either one of the trainer's Pokemon are unable to compete. The only gimmick allowed in this tournament is Mega Evolution. Ash then proceeds to remove his Z-Power Ring and Dynamax Band. Brock states that Ash is only limited to 1 Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, and that's Lucario, and we then skip to Ash saying that he will be making it work. The commentator commences the battle. Ash begins by choosing Charizard, whilst Tobias sends forth Darkrai. Misty asks Dawn if that was the Pokemon she described to her about when they were waiting for the battle to begin, and Brock responds. Dawn then goes on to mention how this Pokemon would sweep teams, and even almost all of Ash's Pokemon until Sceptile defeated it. She also mentions how she is sure it has gotten a lot stronger since then. Tobias says to Ash that it's just like old times, and asks him what makes him so confident that he can win this time. Ash responds by saying that he has learnt so much since then, and after travelling across the regions and becoming world champion, he knows what he has to do to give it his all. During this time, we see Cynthia appear from the viewers lounge, and she smiles saying the following dialogue: "So he's back." Ash begins by asking Charizard to use Flamethrower, and Tobias commands Darkrai to use Dark Pulse. The clash of attacks causes a huge explosion and smokescreen to appear. Ash then uses this to his advantage to command Charizard to use Fire Punch, but Darkrai dodges the attack. Tobias then commands Darkrai to use a Shadow Ball, landing a hit on Charizard. The impact of the attack causes Charizard to slam into a wall, with Ash being shocked at how strong the Pokemon has become, but Charizard stands firm and continues. Darkrai begins to search the area, and during this time, Ash says to himself that he has to pinpoint the next attack in order to get Darkrai down. Charizard then surprises Darkrai from the back and lands a Fire Punch. Ash then commands Charizard to use Flare Blitz, and upon charging forward, Darkrai uses Dark Void, causing Charizard to fall asleep. Brock, Misty and Dawn are all shocked by this, and Pikachu speaks to Ash to recall Charizard. Ash begins to worry and tells Charizard to wake up whilst Darkrai uses Dream Eater. Tobias then says some things never change. Ash screams asking Charizard to wake up, and eventually the Pokemon does. Charizard then lands a Flamethrower directly on Darkrai. It then flies behind Darkrai and lands another Flamethrower. The battle pauses, and Tobias recalls Darkrai and Ash recalls Charizard. Tobias says to Ash that he notices how strong he has gotten, and is surprised that he didn't use Sceptile to take on Darkrai again. Ash responds saying that he always trusts his Pokemon, and believes that no matter which Pokemon he chooses, they'll do their best. Ash then takes out a Master Ball, to which everyone is shocked, and Pikachu smiles in excitement. Ash then chooses Latias as his next Pokemon. Misty is shocked as she doesn't recall Ash catching Latias, and Brock is also confused. Tobias mentions how he is shocked to see that he has the Eon counterpart to his own, but he says it won't stop him. He then summons forth his Latios. Ash smirks saying that he waited for this day, and then brings forward his Mega Glove. The stadium is shocked to know that not only does Ash have a Latias, but he also has the Mega Stone for the Pokemon. Brock then says that he is surprised Ash isn't planning on using Lucario in his Mega State. Ash then proceeds to Mega Evolve Latias. Tobias smirks and he states that if this is the way he wants to go on, then so be it. He then brings forward his own Keystone from his cloak, and proceeds to Mega Evolve Latios. The battle continues with the Eon Duo using a Dragon Pulse from both ends. Ash commands Latios to use Zen Headbutt, and lands a hit on Latios. Latios retaliates with Luster Purge, causing Latios to smash to the ground. The Eon Duo then head to the sky, clashing with each other's wings. Latios returns the attack with Air Slash. Ash notices that from the impact of the Steel Wing, Latios' right wing is damaged, but he too notices that Latias is getting tired after receiving mega damage. Ash then commands Latias to use Future Sight. Tobias grins, stating that Ash will need more luck than that, and then fires another Dragon Pulse. It lands a direct hit on Latias. Latias falls to the ground and struggles to get up. Ash then tells Latias to use Recover. During this time, Latias charges forward, but Latias manages to dodge the attack and manages to land a successful Dragon Pulse. After the smokescreen, Latios appears once again looking tired, and as Tobias commands it to use Luster Purge, the Future Sight hits, causing Latios to faint. Tobias returns Latios, congratulating Ash on the victory, and says this is the second time that he has managed to defeat his legendary Pokemon. Ash thanks Latias and asks if she's happy to continue. Tobias reintroduces Darkrai. The battle continues and both Pokemon charge at one another. Latias uses Dragon Pulse, whilst Darkrai uses Dark Pulse. Brock says that Latias is slowly using energy, and even in her Mega form, she's taken massive damage from Latios. He says Ash needs to end this battle quickly before it's too late. Darkrai proceeds to use Dark Void, but Latias soars into the sky, causing the attack to not reach her. Ash then commands Latias to use Zen Headbutt, flying down charging at Darkrai. Tobias screams and commands Darkrai to use Shadow Ball, and after a massive explosion from both attacks, both Pokemon are left fainted on the battlefield. Dawn is shocked, but Misty states that it seems that Latias had the one final attack left in her. Brock is still amazed at how Ash was able to use Latias and catch her. Latias returns, and Ash thanks her for her hard work. He mentions how even only after using Mega Evolution a few times in training, he is happy that he managed to allow her to excel in battle. Tobias returns Darkrai and begins to clap. He says how he is amazed that Ash is the first trainer to finally defeat the two Pokemon, now forcing him to use a third. Ash questions himself, thinking which Pokemon Tobias will use next. Tobias then shows an Ultra Ball and sends forth his next Pokemon, being Entei. Dawn opens up her Pokedex and it reads Entei's Pokedex entry. Misty tells Brock how she recalls them meeting an Entei long ago. Brock thinks to himself how will Ash be able to take on this Pokemon. Ash then sends forward his next Pokemon, being Infernape. He speaks to himself, stating how he has always envisioned this battle. The battle resumes and Infernape begins to charge forward with Flare Blitz, with Entei doing the same. Both of the Pokemon clash. We then skip to everyone at Oak's lab watching, with Delia wishing her son good luck. Reggie says to Paul that Infernape and Ash have gotten much stronger, to which Paul smirks. Ash says he'll match it again with another Flare Blitz. The clash of fire attacks cause both Pokemon to receive damage, with Infernape taking extra. Ash then commands Infernape to use Mach Punch, landing a hit on Entei. Ash is confused as to why Entei is not retaliating. Tobias smiles, and then Ash tells Infernape to wrap things up with one more Flare Blitz. Upon charging forward, Entei grabs Infernape with his mouth, causing the attack to freeze. Tobias then flicks his hair, commanding Entei to use Eruption, and then a combo of Body Slam causing Infernape to smash deep into the ground. Infernape is then unable to battle. Ash returns Infernape, thanking it for its efforts, and is worried about the other Pokemon Tobias could have. Meanwhile, back at the lab, Oak remembers when he and Delia once encountered an Entei long ago, and she stares, realizing what this Pokemon is capable of. Ash then says he's faced an Entei before, and he knows how strong this Pokemon can be, but he won't back down, and Ash summons Charizard again to the battlefield. Charizard begins by using Flamethrower, with Entei doing the same. Charizard then swoops down and lands a Fire Punch on Entei. Ash shouts with praise, and then Tobias commands Entei to use Body Slam, hitting Charizard hard. Ash begins to worry as he knows Charizard is low on energy, and says to himself that it will be a risk that he'll have to take. And Pikachu is shocked knowing what Ash is about to do next. Ash screams to Charizard that it's time to do what they practiced, and Ash's friends are shocked by this. Charizard grabs Entei and begins to fly above into the sky. Tobias is shocked and confused as to what is happening. Ash then commands Charizard to use Seismic Toss. However, Tobias lifts his left eyebrow and Entei begins to charge an Eruption. Ash is worried and screams to Charizard saying that he can do it. As Charizard launches the attack, Entei's Eruption unleashes during the incredible impact, causing a massive smoke screen to appear. As the smoke subsides, both Pokemon are still standing. However, shortly after, Charizard ends up falling first. Tobias thanks Entei, however seconds later, Entei is left frozen unconscious and unable to battle. Brock mentions that with Entei using Eruption consistently, this must have caused the Pokemon to feel overwhelmed, alongside taking damage from the other attacks. Tobias returns Entei, and Ash returns Charizard, thanking him for his efforts. Tobias then states to Ash that he is truly astonished at how his Pokemon are capable of taking on legendary Pokemon, but he truly wonders how he'll be able to overcome the next one. Tobias then reveals a Premier Ball, and upon throwing the Pokeball, a massive gust of wind blows throughout the stadium. After clearing, Lugia is revealed. Ash begins to sweat knowing how incredibly powerful Lugia is. Misty asks Brock if that is what she thinks it is, with Brock confirming her suspicion. Dawn begins to research Lugia in the Pokedex. Meanwhile, Professor Oak is shocked to see that Tobias has managed to obtain a Pokemon like Lugia by his side. Ash then looks to the sun and says to himself that the time isn't ready yet. He then decides to choose Pikachu. Tobias then says to Ash that he truly admires his strength, but this is where it ends for him. Ash responds by saying it's not over until it's over. Pikachu jumps forward and begins by using a Thunderbolt. Lugia flies high into the sky and uses Ancient Power, with Pikachu climbing the rocks to get closer to Lugia. Pikachu then uses Iron Tail and lands a hit on Lugia. Lugia responds with Air Slash, causing Pikachu to land to the ground. Pikachu then responds with Quick Attack, and Lugia uses Air Slash. Pikachu is caught by the attack, and Ash tells Pikachu to hang on. From the aerial view, Lugia is seen at the top, and Pikachu looks up in shock. Tobias then commands Lugia to use Aeroblast, and it hits Pikachu. Brock, Misty and Dawn are shocked, and Ash begins to worry. Pikachu takes damage but still stands firm. He then begins to use Electro Web, catching Lugia in the attack. Ash then commands Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, and as Lugia breaks free, it lands a hit. Pikachu is happy that he managed to hit the Pokemon. Tobias begins to get frustrated and tells Lugia to use Aeroblast again, and Pikachu manages to dodge the attack this time. Lugia begins to fly directly towards Pikachu, however Pikachu uses Iron Tail to plant itself in the ground. Brock and Misty recall how they've seen something similar like this before. As Lugia charges forward, Ash commands Pikachu to lift itself from the ground with Iron Tail in order to elevate himself high in the sky. However, Lugia uses Iron Tail to smack Pikachu back down. Delia is worried for Pikachu, but Ash grins, and after the dust subsides, Pikachu is nowhere to be seen, and Tobias looks up to see Pikachu high in the sky with an Electro Web flat in the ground. Dawn is happy to see that Pikachu used Iron Tail to plant itself into the ground, and then used Electro Web to create a trampoline in order for it to reach much higher into the sky after the impact. Tobias is shocked, and Pikachu then uses Iron Tail to smack Lugia in the head, causing the Pokemon to land to the ground. Pikachu then uses Thunderbolt, and Lugia is then left unable to battle. Ash is then ecstatic and hugs Pikachu. Misty and Dawn celebrate, but Brock senses something was off with Lugia. Brock learns that Lugia used heavy hitting attacks to weaken Pikachu, inflicting a lot of damage. Even though Pikachu won, it's extremely tired and fragile at the moment. He then questions what is Tobias planning. Ash then tells Pikachu to rest, and then says to Tobias that it was quite impressive. Tobias smirks, saying the word indeed, and then goes on to say, but what about this one? His next Pokemon is Regigigas. Brock can't believe his eyes and says it's impossible. and Dawn also recalls how they encountered this Pokemon long ago. Cynthia says to herself that Tobias is full of surprises, and we then skip to Paul watching the battle with concern. Ash then looks to the sky again and closes his eyes. He then says the words, "I need your help." Ash then reveals a Beast Ball and throws it into the sky. Solgaleo is then revealed. Brock ends up whispering to himself, stating, "So it finally joined you," and is happy to see that Solgaleo joined Ash after all this time. Tobias then smirks and says to Ash that he is thrilled to see the power of another legendary Pokemon by his side. Solgaleo begins by using Flash Cannon, with Regigigas clamping its feet into the ground. The attack hits, but it's easily ended with Regigigas using its hand to slash the attack in half. Brock watches closely as he notices how Regigigas isn't being offensive in the slightest. Ash seems thrilled that Regigigas isn't doing anything and tells Solgaleo to keep attacking. 5 attacks later, Tobias smirks and Regigigas then grabs Solgaleo and then uses Zen Headbutt, hitting Solgaleo directly on its head. Solgaleo is then pushed back and Ash is confused as to how Regigigas' power has heightened. Brock then gasps as he realizes that Regigigas wasn't doing anything at the beginning of the battle due to its ability Slow Start, which causes Regigigas to start with reduced attack and speed. Dawn screams to Ash, stating that he has to be careful, and Brock tells Misty that Solgaleo needs to end this quickly before it's too late. Ash then tells Solgaleo to use Flash Cannon again, however Regigigas stands firm. Regigigas then uses Heavy Slam to hit Solgaleo back again, but this time landing deeper damage. Ash begins to worry, but Solgaleo still stands firm. Ash then tells Solgaleo to use Teleport, causing Solgaleo to disappear instantly. Regigigas turns its head in confusion, and the commentator questions what the Pokemon will do next. Moments after, Solgaleo reappears, using Zen Headbutt to hit the Pokemon back. Ash jumps with joy, but then Tobias commands Regigigas to use Hammer Arm, hurting Solgaleo deep in the chest. Solgaleo is now on the floor. Ash is worried as Solgaleo is injured after the attack, and Tobias commands Regigigas to use Crush Grip to hold Solgaleo in place. Dawn begins to worry as Regigigas begins to charge a Mega Punch. Ash begins to sweat as he has to think of something fast. He then sees that Solgaleo's back 2 feet and tail are free, and recalling how Pikachu used the air to land heavy damage on Lugia, he then commands Solgaleo to jump high into the sky. Cynthia is shocked by this strategy, and upon jumping, Regigigas loosens its grip. Ash then tells Solgaleo to use Sunsteel Strike again, which hits Regigigas in the chest, drilling it down into the ground. Solgaleo then leaps back, and Regigigas is unable to battle. Ash jumps with happiness and runs to Solgaleo, hugging the Pokemon. Misty compliments Ash for using the sky to land another heavy hit on a Pokemon like Regigigas, who can't jump with ease. Back at Oak's lab, everyone is celebrating, and we see Paul and Reggie smirk with excitement. Tobias returns Regigigas and begins to clap. He is truly astonished at how Ash has gotten this far. After battling 100 trainers, he is the only trainer that has gotten this far, and to push him into his final limit. He then tells Ash that many think he is a legendary hunter or someone who maliciously captures legendary Pokemon. However, Tobias tells the story of how back when he was younger, his father was an author who wrote a book all about legendary Pokemon. When Tobias got older, he wanted to meet the legendary Pokemon and understand more about them. This is what inspired him to catch them. Darkrai was the first Pokemon that came in rescue of him after he almost lost his life on the bridge during a thunderstorm. Since then, he's been travelling the world and having many encounters with legendary and mythical Pokemon, with Darkrai helping along the way. But then he says that there is even one Pokemon that he was able to catch and brings forward an Ultra Ball. He then screams to Ash, "Let's see if you can truly understand the power of legendary Pokemon." As the Pokeball sparkles disappear, a green dragon Pokemon is shown with its eyes closed. They open instantly and it rises on the battlefield. A Rayquaza is shown. The commentator is shocked about this and everyone in the stadium is in disbelief. Ash begins to shake and says the word Rayquaza in complete disbelief that Tobias has one on his own. However, he knows that Rayquaza is an ancient Pokemon and bound to be incredibly powerful. Tobias then tells Ash that, "You see, all this time, I wanted to show the world how legendary Pokemon are more than just gods. They can be friends, and they can be loyal Pokemon when entrusted by the trainer." Ash responds by saying that he knows that's true, and this is why he too has legendary Pokemon of his own. His aim was to become a Pokemon Master, to befriend and meet many Pokemon. Tobias nods and acknowledges this statement. The battle continues and Ash sticks with Solgaleo. Ash tells Solgaleo to use Teleport and Rayquaza stays still. Solgaleo then appears and grabs onto Rayquaza's tail. Tobias says to knock it off, to which Rayquaza flings Solgaleo into the sky. Tobias then says to bring it down, and Rayquaza smacks Solgaleo down to the ground. He then commands Rayquaza to use Dragon Dance as Solgaleo is on the floor. Ash tells Solgaleo to watch out and to use the move Flash Cannon, and after lifting its head, it manages to propel the attack. However, Rayquaza then uses Dragon Pulse to break through the attack and finish off Solgaleo. Everyone is shocked as they can see how incredibly strong Rayquaza is, and Dawn says that it didn't even get a scratch on itself. Ash begins to worry, as he knows that Rayquaza is a very fast aerial Pokemon. He returns Solgaleo back to its Pokeball and thanks it for its efforts. Ash then turns to Pikachu and says, "You're up, buddy, I'm counting on you." Tobias asks Ash if it has been a good idea knowing that Pikachu has endured a lot of damage already, and everyone back at Oak's lab seems worried. However, Ash says Pikachu will be fine. Pikachu begins by using Quick Attack with Rayquaza using another Dragon Dance. Pikachu climbs Rayquaza and then uses Thunderbolt. It manages to land a hit. Rayquaza then uses Dragon Pulse hitting Pikachu and pushing it back. Ash notices an open spot and tells Pikachu to use Iron Tail to smash the field, allowing rocks to be scattered within the air. Ash then tells Pikachu to use Iron Tail to fire the rocks at Rayquaza. However, Tobias tells Rayquaza to evade them all. He then tells Rayquaza to fire Hyper Beam and Pikachu gets hit heavily. Pikachu struggles to get up, and after using all its might, it stands once again. Brock, Misty and Dawn are all worried as how Pikachu can continue, but it's too late. Due to the sheer exhaustion, Pikachu ends up fainting. The commentator confirms that Pikachu is unable to battle. Ash is completely shocked, and picks Pikachu up thanking him for his hard work. Everyone at Oak's lab is worried, including Paul and Reggie. Misty says to Brock if she knew which Pokemon Ash chose as his final team member, to which Brock says he is unsure. Dawn mentions too how she is clueless as to which Pokemon Ash will choose. He's already lost the majority of his key Pokemon, and Delia begins to be concerned. Tobias asks Ash how he will ever manage to overcome Rayquaza. However, Ash pulls forward his final Pokeball and says the following words: "Becoming world champion and defeating Cynthia left me with one last goal, and that was to defeat you, Tobias." Ash turns his cap backwards and throws his final Pokeball, revealing Greninja. Ash Greninja is then revealed. The crowd is all shocked and Ash's friends are blown away by how Greninja rejoined Ash again on this occasion. Tobias is concerned as he has never seen or heard of what Ash Greninja is. Ash then thanks Tobias for giving him such a thrilling battle, but this is where he says he's going to win. Tobias smiles and says the following words: "The final matchup is confirmed. Ash Greninja versus Rayquaza." And the battle continues. Greninja begins by using Double Team, with Rayquaza destroying down the clones with Hyper Beam. Greninja then charges forward with Aerial Ace, followed by Water Shuriken. Rayquaza is hit, and the Pokemon responds with Dragon Pulse, injuring Greninja. After continuous attacks, Greninja is landing serious damage on Rayquaza. However, Rayquaza grabs Greninja and crawls around it tightly. Ash begins to worry, and Tobias commands Rayquaza to toss Greninja into the sky. After doing this, a huge green energy emits from Rayquaza as it prepares to use the Mood Dragon Ascent. Brock stands up and screams to Ash, telling him to watch out. The attack hits Greninja with full force, causing it to land on the ground face down. Ash screams, calling out Greninja's name. There is no response. A commentator goes over to Greninja, preparing to give Tobias the victory. However, Greninja's forehead begins to glow. Ash notices how it is almost similar to what happened back in the Kalos League, with Greninja using a giant Water Shuriken. Greninja then stands holding on, with the Water Shuriken on his back beginning to glow orange. Tobias is shocked as he had never seen anything like this before, and begins to question if this Pokemon is a legendary. He notices how Rayquaza is beginning to start to get tired after all of the clashes. Ash says to Greninja to jump and use Water Shuriken. A large orange ring is formed, and it increases inside with the crowd and everyone watching closely. Rayquaza powers up for another Dragon Ascent and fires forward. Greninja throws the Shuriken and clashes with Rayquaza, pushing it back. Everyone watches in anticipation, and Ash and Tobias both scream "go" before a massive explosion is shown. As the smoke fades away, both Rayquaza and Greninja are on the floor. Neither are moving, and the crowd is silent. Ash and Tobias watch nervously to see if any of their Pokemon will respond. Rayquaza begins to move and lifts itself up, however it then falls back down. Greninja then slowly stands up with his Ash Greninja form powering down. The commentator then announces Ash as the winner of the battle. The crowd erupts in excitement, and Ash runs to Greninja thanking him. Brock, Misty and Dawn are shouting with happiness, and everyone back at Pallet Town is jumping with joy, and we also skip to Paul and Reggie both smiling, with Cynthia clapping. Tobias returns Rayquaza, thanking it for its help. He then goes over to Ash, thanking him for a battle he'll never forget, learning that even the strongest Pokemon like legendaries can still lose. Ash responds saying that he was honoured to have battled Tobias again. We then skip to Ash receiving a small trophy for winning the battle event. The end of the episode shows Ash saying goodbye to Misty, Brock and Dawn as he heads back to Pallet Town. He mentions that now he has defeated Tobias, he truly feels like a Pokémon Master, and wishes to explore Mount Silver before heading on his next adventure. The episode ends with us seeing Mount Silver and a wormhole appearing. The episode opens up with us seeing a flashback of Ash defeating Tobias and receiving his trophy. After saying goodbye to Misty, Brock and Dawn, Ash and Pikachu head back to Pallet Town. During their walk, Ash mentions to Pikachu how he felt like a Pokemon Master now that he has defeated Tobias. He mentions to his partner that before embarking on their next adventure, he wanted to explore Mount Silver properly, seeing as last time he didn't manage to explore it fully. Ash and Pikachu then run home to see Delia and reunite with his Pokemon at Oak's lab. Meanwhile at Mount Silver, a giant wormhole appears in the sky. A trainer's hat and the tail of a Pikachu end up emerging from the wormhole, and after falling out, we see that Red with his own Pikachu has been walked into the canon timeline. Red questions how he got here, and he comes across a cave. Walking into the cave, he sees an exit which ends up leading him to the Pokemon League. Red asks himself how he got here, and notices how the area he looks like is very much similar to Kanto. Red then approaches the Pokemon Center, and he asks Nurse Joy where he is. She responds saying that he is at the Indigo League. He then thinks to himself on how Nurse Joy didn't recognize him. Red then notices a TV broadcasting in the lounge, and he sees Ash's recent victory against Tobias. Red is shocked as he notices that Ash appears to show resemblance to him. Confused by how he arrived here to begin with, Red then says to Pikachu that they must explore and aim to meet Ash to learn more about him. Meanwhile in the Kalos region, Squishy and Z2 both sense a disturbance approaching. The next day we see Ash visit Professor Oak's lab and he's reunited with his Pokemon. Everyone rushes forward to congratulate him on his victory against Tobias. Professor Oak then also praises Ash for the strategies he used against Tobias, to which Ash responds saying without the help of his Pokemon, he wouldn't have been able to pull it off. Professor Oak then mentions how he is very intrigued to learn as to how he ended up catching Latias with the Master Ball. Ash begins to explain that after returning home, he received a parcel with a letter. The letter simply had the words "for you," and upon opening the gift, he found out that it was a Master Ball that was inside. Ash then stated how he remembers the first time he came across the Master Ball back in the Hoenn region, and he knew how incredible the Pokeball is. After heading out with Pikachu, Latias appeared before Ash, thanking him for everything he's done for her and her brother. She stated that she was happy to join him on his adventures, and that's where he proceeded to use the Master Ball. Ash then reunited with Gherkin, and after seeking out the Latias site, defeating a fellow Mega Latias in battle, he was able to acquire the Mega Stone. Ash expresses how honoured he is to have such a legendary Pokemon by his side, and even though he wasn't able to practice too much with her, he's happy Latias was able to be strong in battle. Professor Oak applauds Ash after hearing this, and mentions how he is moving closer to his goal of becoming a Pokemon Master. Delia then arrives and begins to hug her son. Happy with his recent victory in return, she mentions how proud she is of him, and besides becoming world champion, he truly has become a strong and courageous person. Ash thanks his mother and asks her if she knew where he got the Master Ball from. Delia ends up ignoring the question. We then see Tracy appear congratulating Ash. Ash then summons his Pokemon and welcomes Solgaleo and Latias to the other Pokemon at the lab. Whilst the Pokemon are relaxing, Professor Oak receives a phone call and gasps in shock. We then transition to Professor Kukui and Oak both having a phone call. Kukui mentions how a new wormhole has emerged and he is unsure if a new Ultra Beast could possibly reveal itself. Ash is confused as he thought there would be no more Ultra Beasts that would appear after the saga that happened in Alola. Kukui then requests Ash to check out the wormhole located at Mount Silver in the Johto region, and he asks him to gather any information that he can that could end up assisting him finding out where it came from. He then sends Ash an image showing a trainer's hat and Pikachu tail. Pikachu is puzzled at the image. He then mentions to Ash to be careful as he too is unsure what threat could be waiting for him. Ash reassures both Kukui and Oak that he'll be fine. Delia mentions to him that he better be back in time for dinner, to which he promises his mother that he will. Before leaving, Ash picks up 5 Pokeballs and stores them away. He then proceeds to leave for Johto. As Ash leaves the lab, we see Red arrive and asks aloud if anyone is home. Professor Oak then appears and Red is excited to see him. However, Professor Oak is confused as to who Red is. Red begins to ask if he remembers him, and he says that he gave him a Charmander as his first starter Pokemon. Professor Oak states that he is still unsure as his records don't seem to show anyone under the name of Red, and Red ends up being confused as he notices that Oak's lab looks incredibly different to the last time he saw it, asking to himself if things have changed. He then asks Oak if he knows where he could find Ash, and Oak responds saying that he has left but he should be back later. Red then says to Oak that there's no need to worry and thanks him before leaving. As Red turns his back, Professor Oak asks him to remind him once again of his name, to which he responds saying, "My name is Red, I'm the Indigo League champion from Pallet Town." We then transition to Ash arriving in the Johto region. Heading towards Mount Silver, Ash speaks to Pikachu questioning what the wormhole could contain. Ash also stares at his Mega Glove as it glistens in the sun. Arriving at the peak of Mount Silver, Ash comes across the wormhole and raises his Voton phone to take a photo and send it to Kukui. Kukui adds Oak to the call as they begin to examine the wormhole. Ash notices how cold the peak of Mount Silver is, and we then see Red walking up in the other direction simultaneously. A gust of wind causes both of the boys' caps to fly into the air. As they both land on the snow, both trainers come face to face. They hand each other over their caps, saying thank you at the same time. They then both proceed to greet one another, saying they're from Pallet Town, and introduce their Pikachus. Ash speaks to himself saying this guy is just, and Red whispers the other half of the sentence saying, "like me." Red goes on to congratulate Ash on his recent victory against Tobias, to which Ash thanks him. Ash then asks Red what brings him to Mount Silver, with Red pointing at the wormhole. He mentions how one moment he was in Kanto, and then the next, he teleported to this position. It's almost like someone brought him here for a reason. He then states he wanted to find out more about Ash, and Ash is puzzled, and asks Red why he wanted to find him. Red answers saying that he notices how both of them are very alike, and the fact he's never seen him in Pallet Town makes him intrigued. Ash begins to explain that wormholes can sometimes transport people and Pokemon from different dimensions, with Red staring at the wormhole questioning if he was transported from a different Kanto region, hence why Professor Oak never noticed him. Red then explains how back in his Kanto region, he became the champion of the Indigo League, and even caught multiple legendary Pokemon. Ash is astonished and reveals that he too is a champion. Meanwhile, Kukui is analysing the wormhole, and tries to communicate with Ash to let him know how the wormhole was formed, also trying to let Ash know that Red is from another universe. The wormhole then disappears, leaving Kukui and Oak both shocked. However, the connection is poor and Ash is unable to hear the message. After learning how both trainers are champions, both Ash and Red ask the question if they would like to both battle. Red mentions that before figuring out what to do, he would love to battle the world champion. With the weather conditions heightening, both trainers head inside to a cave to prepare for their battle. During the preparation, Ash speaks to Pikachu saying how he doesn't know what Red could reveal, but for them to pay close attention. Red speaks to his Pikachu stating that Ash is a world champion and we shouldn't expect anything less than incredible strength. Ash calls Red saying that even though they haven't known each other for long, he's excited for their battle. While saying this, Ash reveals his Mega Glove. Red notices the glove and replies saying that he also looks forward to seeing how the battle unfolds. Red then proposes the idea of doing a 6v6 battle with gimmicks. Ash agrees to this and the battle begins. Red reveals his first Pokeball and summons forward a Venusaur. Ash responds by sending forward his first Pokemon being Sceptile. Red starts the battle commanding Venusaur to use Razor Leaf. Ash tells Sceptile to respond with Leaf Blade destroying the Razors. To immediately counter, Red tells Venusaur to use another set of Razor Leaves. However, Sceptile evades the attack. Sceptile then proceeds to charge forward, but then Red smirks. Ash is concerned, and Venusaur then uses Vine Whip to free Sceptile. Sceptile is startled, and Ash begins to worry. Red then commands Venusaur to use Leech Seed and toss Sceptile to the ground. Sceptile stands firm, but it then begins to have its energy drained from the thin vines and leaves that restrain around it. Ash motivates Sceptile to continue battling, and tells him to use Leaf Storm. Red tells Venusaur to counter with Petal Dance. A tornado of leaves and petals are formed. Ash then tells Sceptile to use Aerial Ace. Accelerating forward, Sceptile manages to land hits, pushing Venusaur back. Ash then commands another Leaf Blade, which lands in succession. Red then tells Venusaur to use Petal Dance, but direct it onto the ground, which allows the Pokemon to elevate itself into the sky. Ash is shocked by this, and Sceptile is also worried about which attack is coming next. However, Ash tells Sceptile to use Leaf Storm and aim its tail on the ground, mirroring Red's strategy, which too allows the Pokemon to take flight. Red is blown away by this, and commands Venusaur to grab Sceptile with Vine Whip. Ash then tells Sceptile to use Aerial Ace on Venusaur's head, bringing them both to the ground. During the fall, Sceptile has its energy taken from Leech Seed, and upon clashing on the ground, a massive slide of rocks lift from the floor. Ash and Red are both unsure as to which Pokemon is still standing, and as the dust subsides, it reveals that both Sceptile and Venusaur are unable to battle. Both trainers return their Pokemon, staring at their Pokeballs and then looking at each other. They both smirk and then thank their Pokemon for battling. Red says to Ash that his Pokemon fought well, and Ash returns the compliment. Meanwhile, Professor Kukui manages to get through to Ash, alerting him of who Red is. Red then frowns, stating that he is unsure how he got here. Kukui stresses that due to the imbalance in the current and Red's timeline, they must figure out how they can predict when the next wormhole will appear, leading to Red having to go back to his original universe. Kukui then states that if Red doesn't go back, then it's unsure if there will be any other complications from canon events. He then tells Ash that for now, it's best to keep Red safe, but also be careful as he has no data at all on the trainer. Kukri says that he will report back once he has any information. Red mentions to Ash that even though their battle has begun, he's having a lot of fun. He hopes that he can finish the battle before he must leave. Ash nods and respects his words. Ash then sends forward his next Pokemon being Lucario, with Blastoise being chosen from Red's corner. Ash then speaks to himself wondering which tricks will be shown from Blastoise, especially seeing as Red's Venusaur was able to lift itself that high into the air. He then tells Lucario to watch carefully. Red tells Blastoise that he knows what he has to do. Blastoise responds with a head nod. Lucario begins by charging forward with Double Team, whilst Blastoise stays still. Red watches carefully for the next move, and Ash commands Lucario to use Aura Sphere. As the spheres are launched, Red screams now to Blastoise, with the Pokemon spinning using its water from its launchers to destroy the attacks. Ash speaks to himself saying he's seen this before, and then gasps learning that the technique Blastoise is using is almost similar to Counter Shield. Red then commands Blastoise to use Skull Bash, smashing Lucario into a wall. Ash turns his head, and Lucario walks forward with scratches on his body. Ash smirks applauding Lucario's spirit, and commands it to use Bullet Punch. Red tells Blastoise to dodge, however Lucario manages to low kick Blastoise off balance and landing a punch. Red tells Blastoise to then use Hydro Pump to rebalance itself, and the power of the water then allows Blastoise to prevent itself from clashing on the floor. Ash is blown away by how precise Blastoise is, especially with its maneuvers, and Red compliments Lucario's willpower. Ash then goes on to explain how Lucario is a special Pokemon. During this time, Lucario begins to then radiate aura, and Red questions what the Pokemon is doing. Ash responds saying that Lucario is powering up, and that there is more to come. Red tells Blastoise to end the adversary and commands the Pokemon to use Water Pulse. Ash then commands Lucario to use Aura Sphere, with both the attacks clashing. A huge smoke screen is shown, with Ash then commanding another double team, and Blastoise responds with Hydro Pump. After destroying the clones, Lucario is seen above Blastoise and uses another Aura Sphere to attack it. A collision is formed, and as Ash praises Lucario, he notices that Blastoise is nowhere to be seen. Lucario then looks up and sees Blastoise preparing another Skull Bash, which drives Lucario into the ground. Lucario is on the floor, and before Blastoise could finish off executing a Focus Punch, Ash tells Lucario to use Reversal, causing Blastoise to faint. Lucario is exhausted now, however Ash congratulates his Pokemon for its efforts and tells him to come back. Red returns Blastoise thanking it for its efforts. Red tells Ash that he can see why he's the world champion. Despite showing similarities, he knows that the battle between them is one he'll never forget. Ash responds saying he looks forward for what is to come. Meanwhile in Kalos, we see Squishy in its 50% form speaking to some unknown individuals. He tells the individuals that a war is coming and that it's time for them to be tested. Red brings forward his next Pokeball, tossing it into the air, and Charizard is then revealed. Ash asks Lucario if he is able to continue, to which he nods. Charizard begins by using a flamethrower, with Lucario responding with Aura Sphere. Both of the attacks collide. Red then tells Charizard to smack its tail onto the ground to cause shards to scatter into the air. Racing forward with incredible speed, Lucario jumps on the rocks, and with Ash commanding it to use Bullet Punch, landing a hit on Charizard. However, Charizard glares at Lucario, and Red tells it to use a Mega Punch, sending Lucario flying. The impact of the collision causes rocks to drop from above, and Red's Charizard hurries to save him from the falling shards. Ash ends up gasping during this moment, however Charizard saves Red with ease. Red tells him not to worry, and that it's time for them to show Ash their true power. Lucario then regains its momentum. Ash grinds his teeth thinking of how he'll be able to counter yet another Charizard, and then he notices how Lucario's aura begins to intensify. He looks at his Mega Glove, and Red begins to hold the necklace around his neck. Ash screams to Red saying that they should give this battle their all, with Red responding saying that he agrees. Red tells Ash that he didn't know Lucario was a Pokemon capable of Mega Evolving, and he reveals the Mega Stones for Charizard, Blastoise and Venusaur on his belt. Ash is astonished to know that Red has more than one Mega Stone, but is honoured that he gets to battle another Mega Charizard X. Red is surprised, but then regains focus on how to battle Lucario. Red begins by telling Charizard to charge with Dragon Claw, whilst Lucario fires an Aura Sphere, smashing the attack in half. Charizard then follows with a Flamethrower, and Lucario uses Double Team. Hosing the clones down, Lucario is then left open, and proceeds to fire another Aura Sphere. Charizard then uses Fire Blast to destroy the attack. Red notices how Ash and Lucario are in sync, and then the aura surrounding Lucario is intensifying. Ash then notices a huge surge of aura emitting from Lucario, commanding him to use another Aura Sphere. As he prepares the attack, Lucario then suddenly falls on one knee. After all of the fighting with Blastoise, it feels incredibly exhausted, and it didn't take enough time to rejuvenate its energy. Charizard then flies above Lucario, and Ash screams to Lucario to charge a reversal. However, Charizard launches a Fire Blast, demolishing Lucario. After the smokescreen disappears, Lucario reverts back to its usual state, unable to battle. Ash returns Lucario thanking him for his hard work. Charizard swoops down to Red, with the trainer patting its head congratulating on the victory. Ash becomes frustrated, as he feels that him and Lucario weren't able to land a hit on Charizard. However, Pikachu speaks to Ash, motivating him to keep going. Ash then says if he wants to fight fire with fire, then that's what he'll get, sending forward his own Charizard. As Charizard lands to the floor, he stares intensely at Red's Charizard, noticing the difference in form. Ash tells Charizard that Red's Charizard ended up Mega Evolving. Despite being focused on battle, Charizard begins to imagine what possibilities he could create should he have Mega Evolved too. Red looks at Ash's Charizard and tells Ash that he notices how well looked after he looks. Ash then ends up explaining to Red the history about how they didn't see eye to eye, with them later on then becoming great partners and even defeating some of their toughest opponents, including legendary Pokemon. As the battle resumes, both Charizard fly towards one another, grabbing each other's arms in the process. They then both proceed to use Flamethrowers head on, causing both of them to push backwards. Ash commands Charizard to use Fire Punch, whilst Red commands his Charizard to use Mega Punch. Both punches collide, causing a shockwave to occur. Mega Charizard X then flies high and fires a Fire Blast, with Charizard using a Flamethrower to destroy the attack. Both Charizards land to the ground, eyeing one another up, before Ash's Charizard releases a spurt of fire from its mouth. Ash then recalls his Pokemon. Red says that he notices how Ash's Charizard has a huge fighting spirit and that his power is one to be applauded for. Ash tells Red that Charizard went through a harsh upbringing, and after becoming one with him, they were both able to excel together. Red says he knows what that feeling is like, and we see a small flashback segment of him and his own Charizard together. He then asks who Ash would choose next, and Ash reveals Infernape as his next Pokemon. Red's Pikachu is confused, and looks at him asking why he chose another fire type. He then tells Charizard to rest, and sends forward Pikachu. As Red's Pikachu leaps forward, Ash's Pikachu begins to spark electricity, with Red's Pikachu smirking. The battle continues. Pikachu starts by using a Thunderbolt, whilst Infernape used Dig. Infernape then emerges and uses Flamethrower, however Pikachu dodges the attack. Red then commands Pikachu to use Brick Break, and Ash tells Infernape to use Mach Punch. As both Pokemon fight, Ash receives a message from Kukui about how the wormhole is said to be reappearing soon. However, Ash is oblivious to this. Pikachu then uses Iron Tail, landing a hit on Infernape. However, Infernape responds with Flamethrower, hitting Pikachu back. Red then tells Pikachu to charge forward with Volt Tackle, and Infernape listens to Ash's command to use Flare Blitz. As both attacks connect, both Pokemon take their recoil damage. Red looks around and notices that some rocks are scattered from earlier in the battle. He then tells Pikachu to fire them using Iron Tail, inflicting damage on Infernape. Ash tells Infernape to stay strong, and then tells it to use Dig. Pikachu looks confused as to where Infernape could be, and Red is also puzzled. But then Infernape reveals itself, with Ash telling him to finish Pikachu off with a Flamethrower. Pikachu is then unable to battle. Red runs forward to pick Pikachu up and praises him. Ash high-fives Infernape on his victory. He asks Infernape if he'll still be able to continue. Red then places Pikachu on the side, and brings forward a Hyper Potion telling him to rest. Ash's Pikachu shouts to Red's Pikachu asking if he's okay, with Red's Pikachu responding doing the peace sign, showing great sportsmanship between them both. Red then brings Charizard back onto the field. Charizard wags its tail and looks closely at Infernape. The battle continues, and Infernape uses Dig. Charizard flies into the air, and Infernape surprises Charizard from behind. He then attempts to use a Mach Punch, however Charizard manages to grab Infernape's arm, swinging it around before tossing it into the air. Charizard then responds with a Mega Punch, landing huge damage on Infernape. Infernape stands holding its stomach, and then attempts to land a Flamethrower on Charizard. The attack hits, however Charizard is unfazed. Ash tells Infernape to hang in, but Red smirks telling Charizard to launch a strong Fire Blast. Infernape attempts to resist the damage, but ends up being engulfed in flames. As the smoke disappears, the fire in Infernape's head begins to enlarge. Ash notices that his Blaze ability has been activated again, and Red begins to sweat. Charizard roars, with Infernape then beginning to unleash a beam of power. Ash remembers the last time this happened against Paul, and how he is very excited to see if he will win. He then tells Infernape to win the battle, and commands him to use Flare Blitz. Infernape launches itself towards Charizard. However, Red tells Charizard to grab Infernape, to which it does, causing Infernape to freeze. Charizard then uses a Mega Punch one more time, knocking Infernape into unconsciousness. Ash is shocked, and begins to question how strong Red and his Pokemon truly are. Ash returns Infernape, praising how much of a good job he done. Red tells Charizard to keep up the good work. Red then tells Ash how he remembers that someone said to him that if there's a strong bond between trainer and Pokemon, then that too can be used as a power. Charizard has been by his side from day one. Ash brings forward to his next Pokeball, saying, "Lend me your strength once again, my friend." Greninja is then summoned. Red then questions Ash if that was the Pokemon that took on Tobias in the final clash, to which Ash says yes. Red is excited as he knows Greninja has a hidden power. Ash then tells Greninja it's time to show Red the hidden power. Ash Greninja is then revealed. The battle continues and Charizard uses Dragon Claw. Greninja uses Night Slash to counter attack, followed by using Water Shuriken. Charizard then uses Mega Punch and Greninja dodges the attack. Ash then tells Greninja to use Double Team and Charizard uses Flamethrower to remove the clones before firing a Fire Blast. Taking damage in sync, Ash recalls how it just feels like the last time he battled Alarm. However, he lost and he wants to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself. He then tells Greninja to use Aerial Ace, landing heavy hits on Charizard. Charizard fights back with Mega Punch and Greninja's Shuriken begins to grow. Red is starting to become overwhelmed and tells Charizard to use Fire Blast. Launching the attack, Greninja manages to evade it and launches a large Water Shuriken at Charizard. Charizard is caught off guard and receives damage from the attack. A huge smoke screen is created and after it clears, we see Charizard on the floor, reverted back to its usual state, unable to battle. Ash jumps with joy and thanks Greninja. Red returns Charizard and says to Ash that even though they may be alike, he still doesn't know too much about him. He then says if it's a battle he wants, then so be it. Red then reveals an Ultra Ball and sends forth his next Pokemon. Revealed is a tall bipedal humanoid Pokemon, and before Ash could say its name, he can't believe with his eyes that Mewtwo is Red's next Pokemon. Red tells Ash that Mewtwo was one of the legendary Pokemon he caught during his travels. Ash says that he has encountered a Mewtwo before, and he knows how unbelievably strong the Pokemon is, but he will make sure to give it his all. Mewtwo crosses its arms, and Red responds to Ash's statement saying that's the spirit. The battle resumes, with Mewtwo and Greninja beginning to circle one another running at lightning speed. Greninja fires a Water Shuriken, with Mewtwo using Swift to destroy the attack, then uses Shadow Ball landing a hit on Greninja. Greninja then retaliates with Night Slash, landing decent damage on Mewtwo. Mewtwo then leaps forward and uses Psychic on Greninja, causing it to bash into multiple rocks. Red then takes the opportunity to command Mewtwo to recover, whilst Greninja is attempting to get up. Ash motivates Greninja to continue, however Mewtwo is already in front of it and fires another Shadow Ball, knocking Greninja out of the battle. Ash is shocked and surprised as he thought Greninja would have been able to handle the power of Mewtwo. Mewtwo looks back at Red and Red smiles. Pikachu looks up to Ash and tells his friend not to worry. Charizard is then summoned again. Charizard begins to fire up, with the flame on its tail beginning to get bigger. Mewtwo then starts to use Shadow Ball, with Charizard dodging the attack. Charizard then flies high using Flamethrower in an attempt to hit Mewtwo. Mewtwo then uses Swift again, bringing Charizard to the ground. Ash begins to worry as he is unsure if he'll be able to counter Mewtwo. He then opts in for a more aggressive approach and tells Charizard to charge forward with a Fire Punch, which ends up successfully connecting. Mewtwo is pushed back, however its eyes begin to glow purple, leading to the move Psychic being used. Ash asks Charizard if he is able to continue, to which he is. He then uses Dig, and Red tells Mewtwo to scout him out. Using its psychic powers, Mewtwo is able to locate Charizard and fires a Shadow Ball to the ground, causing Charizard to reveal itself. Charizard then swoops in to grab Mewtwo, with Ash then commanding him to use Seismic Toss. Red seems calm and collected, and Ash is puzzled by this. Ash then tells Charizard to use Flamethrower, when driving down to add extra damage onto Mewtwo. Red then tells Mewtwo to use Psychic during the fall. A massive explosion is caused. Leaping out of the smokescreen is Red's Mewtwo, revealing Charizard is unable to battle. Pikachu runs over to Charizard, and Charizard smiles, reassuring his friend that he's okay. Ash then returns his Pokemon saying thank you for all of his hard work. Red congratulates Mewtwo and the Pokemon wags its tail. Red then says to Ash that he caught Mewtwo and he knew that the Pokemon would be a lot to handle, hence why he's worked hard with the legendary Pokemon to learn more about it. Ash tells Red that he's really done well to gain the trust and confidence of a Pokemon like Mewtwo. He then looks at Pikachu and says, "You're up, buddy." Pikachu leaps forward and prepares itself for battle. Ash then tells Red that he will show him what it means to be world champion. Red responds saying, "You may be world champion, Ash, but you will never defeat me. It's now Pikachu versus Mewtwo." Pikachu begins by using a quick attack hitting Mewtwo. Mewtwo retaliates using Shadow Ball, causing Pikachu to take damage. Ash and Red both smile as they enjoy the battle. Pikachu uses Thunderbolt, whilst Mewtwo uses Swift to destroy the attack. However, Pikachu is there with another Iron Tail hitting Mewtwo directly. Mewtwo then uses Psychic before sending Pikachu flying. Ash shouts to Pikachu and he smirks, flicking his hat into the air. He then says, "Hey Red, check this out." The pair prepare to use the 10 million volt Thunderbolt Z move, and Red's Pikachu watches in amazement. Red is then blown away as to what power Pikachu and Ash portray, and whispers to himself during this that this is what it means to be world champion after all. He then screams to Mewtwo to use Recover. During this time, the lightning strikes clash, and due to the impact, a gigantic explosion is caused within the cave. With the smokescreen disappearing, Mewtwo is on the floor, and Pikachu picks up Ash's hat onto his head again. Ash runs over to Pikachu and throws him into the air, praising him. Red runs over to Mewtwo, putting his arm around the shoulder, thanking the Pokemon. Ash then heads to Red and helps them both up, with Mewtwo letting out a small growl of thanks to Pikachu before being returned into its Ultra Ball. Ash and Red both look around and notice that the ceiling is beginning to collapse. Both trainers get startled and begin to run out of the cave before it falls down. They then both look at each other and say oops before giggling. Red then asks Ash where they should continue their battle, and Ash tells them that they should return back to the peak where they first met, especially seeing as the snow has now calmed down. The battle finally reaches its endpoint with Ash choosing Pikachu and Red showing Ash a Master Ball. He then asks Ash if he's ready, to which Ash then responds. Red then reveals his final Pokemon being Lugia. Ash is shocked and confused, and tells Pikachu that he has to keep a close eye as like he did with Tobias' Lugia. Pikachu begins by using Electro Web to trap Lugia into place, however Lugia breaks free. Pikachu then uses Thunderbolt on Lugia, to which the Pokemon is unfazed. Ash is puzzled as to why Lugia isn't retaliating, and Red smirks. Pikachu then uses another Thunderbolt, to which hits Lugia, but then the Pokemon begins to glow. It then begins to change shape, revealing that the true Pokemon was Mew all along, which was transformed into a Lugia. Ash and Pikachu both say Mew's name in unison, and are lost for words. Red tells Ash that Mew was the Pokemon that he caught before being sent through the wormhole. It was the final Pokemon he caught before completing the Pokédex in Kanto. Ash looks at Red and asks him how did he manage to catch it, with Red responding saying it was tough, but thanks to his Pokemon they managed to do it. Pikachu begins to watch carefully as Mew circles and dances in the sky. Ash questions himself, asking how Red was able to catch both Mewtwo and Mew, and that he reaffirms himself, indicating that he won't stop. Ash then screams, "Let's go Pikachu." Pikachu uses Thunderbolt, and Red commands Mew to use Fire Blast. Pikachu uses Quick Attack to get close to Mew, however the mythical Pokemon then uses Iron Tail to hit Pikachu back. Pikachu then uses Iron Tail as well, with both Pokemon colliding. Mew then uses Solar Beam hitting Pikachu. Ash asks Pikachu if he can continue, to which he does. After multiple attacks being exchanged, the two Pokemon are almost at their limits. Red tells Mew to use Hyper Beam, and Ash tells Pikachu to use Thunderbolt. As both attacks fire, a huge green light separates the two attacks. Ash and Red are both shocked. Landing in front of them is Zygarde in its complete form. Ash is surprised to see the Pokemon again, and asks why it's here. Red questions Ash if it's a Pokemon, and Ash responds saying that it's Zygarde the Pokemon that he worked together with to save the Kalos region. Zygarde then goes on to say that Red is now in the canon timeline, various imbalances are being formed, and that a greater threat is now approaching Kanto. Zygarde tells Ash that he must prepare himself and that a war is about to begin. In order to protect Kanto and the world, Zygarde wants Ash to meet him later to discuss further. During this time, the wormhole that Red came from reappears, and Ash receives a call from Kukui. Kukui then says that this is now Red's chance to go back to his original timeline before it's too late. Ash and Red both look at one another sad, knowing that they'll be the last time they'll ever get to see each other. Ash then apologizes to Red, saying that they couldn't finish the battle, to which Red says he beat him to it. Red tells Ash that he is so grateful to have met him. Throughout his life, he's never met anyone like him, and in fact he's honoured to have met Ash. After the way he's seen how both of them battled today, he goes on to mention how similar they are to one another, and it seems the universe brought them together for a reason. Ash says he never thought he would meet someone so similar to him, and that he hopes one day they can battle again. It seems that they were destined to meet one another to share the art of battling and have fun. He hopes that no matter which universe they are in, hopefully they can meet again. Ash and Red both share a handshake before Zygarde lifts Red onto his shoulder, allowing him to jump through the wormhole. Red and Pikachu wave to Ash saying goodbye, with Red shouting the words "Good luck Pokémon Master," and Ash tells him to be the very best like no one ever was. Red then disappears into the wormhole, with it closing shortly after. Kukui tells Ash that it seems that he made a new friend, and Ash responds saying yes. He then tells Ash that he will monitor if any more wormholes will appear before wishing him good luck with his next quest. Zygarde then approaches Ash and tells him to meet him at Viridian Forest the next day before disappearing. We then skip to Ash looking to the sky, saying to Pikachu that he didn't expect that to happen before leaving back to Kanto. Back in Red's timeline, he arrives back at Pellet Town, and tells his mother how he aims to continue his journey to travel the world and meet more Pokemon and people. Red's mother asks him what motivates him to take on this new goal, and Red responds by closing his eyes saying the word myself. We then skip to see 5 Zygarde calls gathered around a tree log. Each Zygarde call is coloured differently to one another, with Squishy saying that it's time for the boy and his Pokemon to reach their next potential. The episode then concludes with us seeing Giovanni looking at a green test tube, laughing menacingly, with a Zygarde cell closing the episode frame.
I am actually